Welcome back to the Experience Franklin County, Indiana podcast, where each episode we take a look at the people, places, events, culture, and history that make Franklin County, Indiana such an interesting and amazing place. This episode of the Experience Franklin County, Indiana podcast is a little bit different. We're going to be looking at a different topic. We're going to be talking about Bigfoot and the supernatural in Franklin County, Indiana, and in Indiana at large. According to the International Bigfoot Research Organization, and yes, such a thing really exists, there have been 82 documented sightings of Bigfoot in the state of Indiana, including several in our part of the state. Does Bigfoot exist? Does he have a home here in southeastern Indiana? Well, I'll leave that to you to decide for yourself. But we would like to know if you have seen Bigfoot or another cryptid, or if you've had a supernatural experience in Franklin County, Indiana. Drop us a note through our website, that's www.franklincountyin.com, or reach out to us through our social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, and we would love to chat with you about it. Let's get right into the interview. All right, today we're going to be talking with a gentleman that wears many hats and wears them very, very well, but today we're going to be talking about a topic that I'm very excited to talk about. We're going to be talking about cryptozoology, one of my favorite topics. We're going to be talking about some of the things going on in southern Indiana, some of the things that have been seen in southern Indiana, and the topic in particular. So, Aaron Martin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Rick.
Well, let's start at the beginning. What sparked your interest in cryptozoology?
I would say it goes back to when I was 13. I got this ad for these things called weird and wild creature cards in the mail. And so I decided to pay, and they would come once a month, and there were all sorts of things. There were prehistoric animals, dinosaurs and mammoths. There were modern animals, sharks and giraffes and whatnot. But then there was a whole section for monsters of the mind, cryptids, mythological creatures, folkloric creatures, that sort of thing, and I found them fascinating. They were more than I had ever heard of, from more cultures than I had ever heard of, so that really sparked my interest.
Well, I've never heard of that set of cards, and do you still have those?
All of them.
Oh my gosh, I love that at 13 years of age, a set of, I guess these were like trading cards, kind of like baseball cards?
Yes, sir.
Oh my gosh! So you just started becoming interesting in the world of cryptozoology and the world of cryptids, and of course the most famous one here in the United States, of course, is Bigfoot.
Yes.
So we're going to start off with the difficult question: does Bigfoot exist?
I think it's quite possible.
I agree. You know, we are still discovering new species on a regular basis. A lot of the world, there's a lot of wilderness, a lot of things left explored. So I think it is absolutely very possible. And as you know, there have been some Bigfoot sightings in Indiana, haven't there?
Yeah, that's right. I think Bigfoot's been seen in several counties in this state.
There recently was an account of a sighting in rural Franklin County. Dearborn County has had some sightings. Some areas in northern Indiana have had some sightings. And it's kind of interesting because when I think of Bigfoot, I think of them being sighted like up in the Pacific Northwest, Oregon and Idaho and up in there. But they've really been seen all over the country, haven't they?
If I recall, there have been recorded Bigfoot sightings in every state except Hawaii.
Oh, my God. And that makes a lot of sense because that would be a long way for them to swim to get over.
Right.
So do you have a favorite cryptid?
I would say my favorite is the Jersey Devil.
I was just reading about the Jersey Devil earlier this morning, believe it or not. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, there are a few variations of the story, but the one I've heard was that in the mid-18th century, there was a woman named Mother Leeds, and she was having her 13th child. And it was an unusually difficult childbirth. And there are two variations. Either the child's father was the devil, or because of the difficult childbirth, she cursed this child in the devil's name, and he became a monster. Big sort of crazy thing with hooves and gnashing dog teeth and horse head and wings. So it's a crazy monster. It's an interesting story. It's been sighted all over New Jersey and into Pennsylvania. It's terrifying in the artist renderings I've seen of it, and it's just fascinating. Either the son of a devil or a mother cursing her own child. Either way, it's very interesting. And it lives in the Pine Barrens, which is just, even in New Jersey, which we think of as being so near New York and Philadelphia, it has some crazy wilderness out there that's not very populated. A lot of ghost towns in the Jersey Pine Barrens.
So the Jersey Devil and some of the artist renderings I have seen of the Jersey Devil put me a little bit in the mind of the Mothman, which is
Hmm.
not too far. It's mostly in West Virginia, right?
Right. The Mothman is mainly located around Point Pleasant, West Virginia. I was privileged last year, I think, to go to the Mothman Museum in Point Pleasant. So they've got a big statue of it. And the story goes that the Mothman was responsible for a bridge collapse in 1967.
And I believe there's a movie based on that incident. Is that right, or do you know?
The Mothman Prophecies. There
That's
is a
right.
movie,
Yes.
and I have the book. I've not made it all the way through yet, but I'm working on it.
And I think that movie was that Richard Gere that was in that movie. Do you remember?
I don't recall.
Yeah, I don't recall either. But yeah, a really interesting movie. Well, here in Indiana, we've talked for just a moment about Bigfoot, but there are several other cryptids noted in Indiana. In northern Indiana, Beast of Busco. Are you familiar with that one?
I am familiar. Beast of Busco, Cherubusco, farmer on his farm, claimed that he saw a gigantic snapping turtle, like twice the size of a car, if I remember correctly, on his farm. And then a few researchers thought they saw it in a lake. So, yeah, that's interesting because giant turtles, I mean, a lot of the cryptids you see are in the Bigfoot mold, big and hairy, or they're giant sea monsters or lake
Right.
monsters. So, Beast of Busco is kind of unique. We don't see too many giant turtles in the cryptid world.
And a giant turtle is not out of the realm of possibility. Alligator snapping turtles. We have common snapping turtles in Indiana, but down south they have alligator snapping turtles, which grow to well over 100 pounds. Huge turtles, and of course the giant sea turtles like leatherbacks and green sea turtles. Holly and I had the chance last December to be within about 2 feet of a giant sea turtle, and I was
Wow.
stunned at the size of a small car, just massive creature. So that's not out of the realm of possibility. And that story of Oscar is what they named the turtle, the Beast of Busco.
Mm-hmm.
Put that town on the map. They have a turtle festival every year. When you drive into Cherubusco, there's the sign right there on the highway. Welcome to Turtle Town, USA. A lot of the businesses have turtle figurines out front. It really has kind of taken on a life of its own. And like Point Pleasant, is it Point Pleasant, West Virginia? I may have my names
Yes.
mixed up. Yeah. Mothman has kind of turned that town into a bit of a tourist attraction because of that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
I
So in
certainly
Indiana,
wouldn't have gone there.
yes, Indiana, we've talked about the Beast of Busco. Are you familiar with the mud maids in the Ohio River?
Oh, that's one I've not heard of. Tell me.
So in the late 1800s, of course, there were steamships going up and down the Ohio River delivering goods all apart around this part of the United States, and there were several sightings of mermaid-like creatures lounging in the mud in the stretch of river from Evansville all the way up to about Madison, Indiana, or so. Uh,
Wow.
and some accounts call them mud men, mud maids, and so on. And there's a lot of artists renderings of those. Really fascinating. So in Indiana, we do have a rich history of cryptids, and what I want to touch on, because in Franklin County we have a lot of Native American influence. Are you familiar with the Pugwudgies?
Yes, I've heard of those. I thought they were mostly out east.
So there is apparently, for those that may not know, a Pugwudgie is very similar to a Native American leprechaun. Very
Hmm.
small, humanoid, or actually human type features. They have speech. Nobody can understand it. And they're known for being tricky and mischievous. And there apparently is, according to records and writings, a thriving colony of them around Mound State Park near Anderson, Indiana. And of course, Mound State Park is
Okay.
a Native American burial ground. And there are lots of fascinating stories about how they've tricked some people that were out hiking the trails and so on. So you should look those up. Those are really fascinating.
Right. Like I said, I've heard about Puckwudgies in Massachusetts
Right.
and Connecticut and their trickster ways, how if you see one, just don't follow it because you never know what it's going to have in mind.
Right. So fascinating, fascinating things. Are there any other here in Indiana or in the United States that come to your mind, Aaron?
Well, there are quite a few that fascinate me. For example, the skunk ape down in Florida, big, scary primate that smells like the worst thing you've ever smelled, lives in the middle of a swamp because, of course, it does. So the skunk ape is fascinating. I actually read that there is a law on the books in Florida that it is illegal to harass skunk apes. So keep that in mind. Don't mess with Florida wildlife, whether it is cryptid or otherwise.
I did not know that, but I have read about the skunk ape, and all of the accounts are have one thing in common, and that is that horrid smell. People talk about they can smell them long before they see them, and it talks about the smell being like rotting flesh. Some of the accounts talk about that. Have you personally had a sighting of Bigfoot?
I can't say for sure.
Okay.
But when I was growing up, I lived in the woods. Well, not in the woods, of course. I lived in a house, but I lived near the woods.
I love that. Thank you for clarifying. That was fantastic.
But I saw something large. I thought it was a deer because I knew that deer were the largest thing that lived in the woods. But then it looked like it was standing up. And then I thought it was a really big person. And so I was like, I don't want to talk to really big people. The only big people I'm supposed to talk to are my mom and dad. So I left. It could have been Bigfoot. It could have been a random person. I did not get a very good look, and I was quite young. That is the closest I would say I have come.
And what part of the country did you grow up in?
Wisconsin, south central Wisconsin.
And there have been a lot of sightings up there because lots of Wisconsin is very rural, isn't it?
Yes, a lot of farmland and forests.
Very much like southern Indiana. The climate is different in the wintertime especially, but rural, lots of wooded, lots of farmland, lots of places for creatures like that to hide out and escape notice. And anybody that's been a hunter knows that wildlife typically likes to escape human notice, don't they? Unless they've been domesticated.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's not like you're going to go out into the middle of the woods and Bigfoot's going to come right up to you and say hi. Right. They're like bears. They're like deer. They're like foxes. They like to stay hidden.
And southern Indiana, we have so many deep forests, so many deep woods, a lot of rural areas. You can drive on a county road and be surrounded by woods on both sides. So it's perfect habitat for something like that. And you're adding another feather to your cap. I mentioned earlier that you wear a lot of different caps, but you are finishing up a book about cryptids right now. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Can you tell us a little bit about it without giving any secrets away?
So my book is part of a series which involves a gentleman whose job is to learn about cryptids and to keep them from bothering humans if that is their intention. In my first book, the one that's nearly finished, he goes down to Mexico to visit the cryptids there. But he also has an encounter with a certain undead creature in Chicago before that.
So it sounds a bit like a mystery?
It's a bit of a mystery, bit of adventure, bit of action, a little bit of fantasy. It's got a lot of elements.
It sounds fascinating. Is this the first book you've written?
If you don't count The Giant and the Giant Pickle when I was 6, then yes.
Have you had that one published? That might be a great one to have published.
Yeah, I'll look at it. I'm not sure. My dad probably threw that one away.
So you've had a lifelong fascination with cryptids,
Yes,
starting when you were 13, when you got that trading card set. And I absolutely love that story, how something at such a tender age kind of changed the direction of your life a little bit, kind of set your life course on path. If somebody was interested in finding out more about cryptids in Indiana, do you have any sources off the top of your head? And if not,
well, I've got a few books. I will actually show you. I just bought this book yesterday at a bookstore in Bloomington, Chasing American Monsters. It's got a chapter about every state. So I was reading up a little bit about Indiana's cryptids.
Awesome. And did it mention anything other than the Bigfoot and the Beast of Busco that we had talked about here in Indiana?
Oh, it's got a few in there. It talks about a monster in Crawfordsville. It talks about a lake monster in Columbus, something in Johnson County. So, yeah, it's got 6 or 7 Indiana cryptids in there.
I had completely forgotten about the beast in Crawfordsville. I remember that story, and I had completely forgotten about that. Can you give us the name of that book and the author, Aaron?
It's called Chasing American Monsters by Jason Offutt.
And that book has it lists each one of the 50 states, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. So let's take a little bit of a segue here in this interview. We've been talking about cryptids, but you also have an interest in the supernatural and ghost stories. Is that right?
Yes, I do.
Metamora in Franklin County is supposedly one of the most supernaturally active places in the central United States. Lots and lots of stories. So I'm going to ask another hard question. Do ghosts and spirits exist?
The same thing as I said for Bigfoot. It is certainly possible. I mean, the afterlife is complicated. It is really hard to say that something doesn't linger on because it's an entire human life, Rick.
It is, absolutely.
It very well could leave some sort of impression, especially given the power of human life, human emotions, everything that we experience when we're on this earth.
And at the essence, it's energy, right? It's
right.
Energy. And I am not a scientist, but I have read that energy doesn't end, it just changes forms somehow. So It makes sense to me that a person's life energy would not just end like that, but would somehow change forms. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Have you had any supernatural experiences?
I would say when I was about 14, I woke up and there was a man in a top hat, almost as tall as the ceiling, gray skin, not really moving, holding something in his hands. And then I blinked and he was gone.
Were you frightened? What was your reaction to that?
I was scared. I had the sense that whatever he wanted was not benevolent.
Oh my goodness. I would have been scared also. It's an interesting thing. I've always been a skeptic about things like that, and maybe we'll talk later in a different episode. But I had an experience in a building in Metamora that kind of changed my thinking on that, and where I believe something was trying to communicate or did communicate with me. That'll be a topic for a more supernatural type podcast. Well, very good. So we're talking with Aaron Martin, author. I'm going to call you a cryptozoologist because I think that's an unofficial title that you have. Got interested in this from a set of trading cards he got when he was 13 years old, and I absolutely am in love with that story. Have you thought about going on one of the Bigfoot expeditions?
I've thought about it, haven't quite found the right opportunity, but it's something I'd be interested in doing.
We were coming through northern Georgia a few months ago, and I found the Bigfoot Research Center, which is right on the Tennessee Georgia line back in the mountains back there. And it sounds fascinating. I would like to make a stop there and see it. Do you think there's a chance that some of the sightings of Bigfoot around southern Indiana are legit?
It's certainly possible.
I do too. And again, talking about how southern Indiana is quite wooded and secluded, it seems like perfect habitat for that. So Aaron Martin, we've been chatting with Aaron today about Bigfoot, about cryptids, about the Jersey Devil and the Mothman and the Pukwudgies and the mermaids on the Ohio River. Really, really fascinating stuff. And Aaron, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to spend with me. Does your book have a title yet?
It's called The Sacrifice of Blood, which, given that it takes place in Mexico, should give some hint over the direction it's going in, but I won't say it explicitly.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I hope you'll keep us updated on the progress in the book, because we certainly want to check it out when it is published. Aaron Martin.
Absolutely.
Talking about cryptids and some other fun stuff here in Franklin County and in southern Indiana. Aaron, thank you so much for taking time out of your day.
Absolutely. Good talking to you, Rick.
We would like to thank Aaron Martin for taking time out of his busy schedule to chat with us about this fascinating topic today. I learned a lot. I hope that you did also. And once again, if you've had an experience here in Franklin County, Indiana, we would really like to know about it. Maybe we'll bring you on as a guest for a future podcast as we kind of explore the things that are going on here. Don't forget, we have lots of great things coming up the rest of the summer, fall, winter, and into Christmas time here in Franklin County, Indiana. And you can check our website anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's www.franklincountyin.com. You can click on the links and you can find lodging, dining, events, festivals, and more. And please be sure and follow us on our social media. That's Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. We'll keep you up to date. Until next time, I'm Rick Garrett, and I hope to see you experiencing Franklin County.